2014. He came here with the clothes on his back, and he found himself in pretty bad circumstances. Nobody knew he was actually coming to the United States. And he ended up actually homeless for a little bit. Today, Ajmal is one of the largest real estate agents in the greater DC area, and he sells exclusively homes to Afghans who have made it to DC and found new lives for themselves. He is thriving. There are businesses that are popping up everywhere by these people, but what they need to get started is that helping hand. They need a first friend. These are a lot of people who are, for the first time, are going to arrive in a country where the predominant means of exchanging money is a credit card. They've never seen that. So the types of things that people could be doing are, we need to be arranging community support. We need Americans to welcome these people, not just into their homes, but hire them. Put them to work in your companies.
Matt Zeller is an Afghanistan war veteran who co-founded No One Left Behind, a nonprofit that helps Afghans who've worked with the U.S. secure visas and finance the resettlement process. Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Iberia Bank, a division of First Horizon, backed by over 156 years of experience and history. Iberia Bank is proud to support WJCT's educational and cultural programming, with locations throughout Florida or online at iberiabank.com. Member FDIC. Baptist Health is a proud sponsor of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Tune in to WJCT News 89.9 Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. It's the #1 killer of teens. One text or call can wreck it all. Let's put an end to distracted driving.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
Climate change and national security. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, we'll tell you how our own digital magazine, Adapt Florida, is working with city officials and the military to spark conversation about threats to this area's defense posed by climate change. That's ahead. Then later.
We're the only certified rape recovery program, and we also provide the forensic exams for those seeking support immediately following a sexual assault.
The Women's Center of Jacksonville, helping survivors of sexual assault survive and thrive. Plus, how local music venues are dealing with vaccine mandates for some touring acts. And our own Josh Torres on the Jaguars and the Saints tonight. It's all ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. There was a firefight at the airport in Kabul, Afghanistan today. Germany's military says a member of the Afghan Guard was killed and 3 others were hurt. It's not known who the other gunmen were. Jane Ferguson of PBS NewsHour says the situation at the Kabul airport remains bad as Afghans are still trying to get inside to flee.
They're trying to get into the airport. They're often there for days. We've seen dead bodies in the morning from those who have been crushed by the crowds. We've seen women fainting in front of us from the heat. It's August in Afghanistan, after all. It's hard to sometimes find the words to describe the chaotic scene.
She spoke to NPR's Morning Edition. Several people are still missing in the town of Waverly, Tennessee, west of Nashville. It was hit by a massive storm Saturday. At least 21 people died in flash flooding. From member station WPLN, Blake Farmer reports rescue teams are publishing lists of the missing.
The water rose so fast, with as much as 17 inches falling in some spots, that people were fighting through muddy floodwater before they knew what happened. And the torrent was treacherous. Cars and trucks floated downstream like driftwood. Some houses were even swept away as the tenants swam for higher ground. And now the search is taking a turn, says Patrick Sheehan of Tennessee's Emergency Management Agency.
I would expect, given the number of fatalities we have seen so far, that we're going to see mostly recovery efforts at this point. rather than rescue efforts.
Some of those who were washed away have been reunited with their families miraculously, but families are increasingly losing hope. For NPR News, I'm Blake Farmer in Nashville.
Tropical Depression Henri is meandering through the Northeast after making landfall in Rhode Island yesterday. But as Henri lingers, the National Weather Service warns the risk of excessive rainfall remains. That includes the chance for flash flooding. The House is cutting short its summer recess, and it's reconvening today. Democrats are trying to pass President Biden's multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure and social spending bills. As NPR's Amy Held reports, Democrats are facing roadblocks from some within their party.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is telling Democrats they must get the dual-track legislation passed without delay, after the Senate passed a bipartisan trillion-dollar infrastructure bill and approved a $3.5 trillion spending resolution. That one's a no-go among Republicans. It would invest in child care, family leave, and climate change provisions, long-standing Democratic priorities. But first, the infighting. House progressives say they'll vote no on infrastructure unless Pelosi brings up the social policy package first. Moderates want the opposite order. Pelosi has floated the idea of advancing both bills simultaneously using procedural rules. A slim majority means she can only afford to lose 3 votes. Amy Held, NPR News.
This is NPR.
And it's 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Michelle Coram. Orlando leaders say the coronavirus surge is causing a shortage of liquid oxygen. Florida environmental reporter Amy Green explains they're calling on residents to get vaccinated and conserve water.
The Orlando Utilities Commission says it uses liquid oxygen as a disinfectant and also to remove hydrogen sulfide, which is not harmful but causes a rotten egg smell. The utility says it's within about a week of running out of liquid oxygen and is asking customers to avoid activities like watering their yards and washing their cars for several weeks. OUC says reclaimed water is not affected. Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer says the city will turn off its water features at its parks. He acknowledges the dramatic nature of the request, but says the action is needed. OUC is the state's second largest municipal utility, serving some 250,000 customers in Orange and Osceola counties. Amy Green in Orlando.
In downtown Jacksonville, a section of Bay Street has reopened after being shut down due to structural concerns associated with the demolition of Berkman Plaza 2. The Riverwalk is still closed for now, according to a report from our partner News4Jax. The closure of several blocks of Bay Street from Liberty to Marsh Street left residents of nearby buildings to find alternate routes to get home. Right now, it's 81 degrees, overcast here in downtown Jacksonville. Partly sunny today with afternoon storms likely. This is WJCT News.
Support for NPR comes from iDrive, providing cloud backup, full system backup, and on-site iDrive appliance to protect PCs, Macs, and servers from data loss due to crashes and ransomware at iDrive.com/NPR. And Americans for the Arts.
Protecting North Florida from the impacts of a warming planet. Good Monday morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, some other news on our menu this week. We're going to tell you how climate change is threatening our national security. A preview of a special Adapt Town Hall here at WJCT Public Media. You can join this week. Get on the line now, folks. It's 549-2937. Then later, First Coast performance venues and vaccine mandates from big national acts. How local venues are being caught in the middle. They want to get live music back safely on local stages. That's in our Jacksonville Music Experience. That's later in the hour. But first this morning, the latest numbers on the pandemic. Friday, the state reported 150,118 new COVID cases over the 7-day period. Good news, that's a slight decrease. Duval County's new cases tickled down a bit too, and the same story we're seeing in Clay and St. Johns counties. All right, folks, that's the good news. Here's the bad news. We are not out of the woods, not by a long shot. The positivity rate across the state is at 19.8%. and new vaccinations decreased by about 1/3 in most of our area. Not enough people are getting vaccinated. And in the state's latest report, Florida recorded new COVID fatalities at a rate of more than 200 per day from August 13th through the 19th. That is an all-time high for this pandemic, which is remarkable considering that free life-saving vaccines are widely available everywhere. The Florida Department of Health added 1,486 more deaths to its total. So here's the toll among Florida residents from coronavirus. 42,250 people now dead. And people continue to get sick and to die from this virus in alarmingly high numbers. Please get vaccinated and wear your mask. Now, later today, the Duval County School Board is meeting to discuss whether to tighten up its mask policy for students. Right now, parents can opt out of masking their child in Duval County, but more and more districts around Florida are defying Governor Ron DeSantis and requiring masks for all students, no exceptions, unless you have a doctor's note. We'll be following this important story on our air today and on our website. Now, regular listeners of this show know that we are really focused on the pandemic, but there is other important news happening. And right now, we want to share word about an important event coming up tomorrow here at WJCT. The American Security Project and the Northeast Florida Regional Planning Council, in partnership with our digital magazine Adapt Florida, are hosting a panel discussion that will feature members of the military and members of the Jacksonville City Council. This event is free and open to the public and will live stream. It will focus on the progress we're making in this city on resilience, what the future holds, and why combating climate change is imperative for our national security. We're pleased to give you all a preview right now as we welcome Lieutenant General John G. Castellaw, retired with the United States Marine Corps. Lieutenant General, good morning.
Good morning.
So good to have you. Also on the line, WJCT News, Brendan Rivers, our lead reporter at Adapt Florida. Hey, Brendan.
Morning, Melissa.
And as we talk about climate change and national security, give us a call, 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax. We should note members of the Jacksonville City Council, Randy DeFore, and retired U.S. Navy Captain Aaron Bowman, they'll be on hand with you tomorrow night, sir, to talk about how climate change is so important for the military to be focusing on. This may come as news to some people, Lieutenant General Castellaw, but isn't it true that the military has been studying this and working on this issue for some time?
It is, but first, let me share the concern that our Tennesseans are having today with a tragedy that occurred on Saturday when an extreme weather event resulted in the death of at least 21 people, with another 20 missing. Our thoughts are with our fellow Tennesseans today as the recovery continues. In terms of the military, I think that from the day I started in the military, climate and the weather has been such a focus. You learn first that weather, terrain, and the enemy are things that you always consider when you conduct and plan for operations. And I think that that continued to grow with me. And I think the real moment that I understood how the impact on the wider, not just the military, but on our national security occurred when I was on top of Aditha Dam in western Iraq around 2005 or so. And I remember watching a column of Marines and armored vehicles come along a road that ran through a valley that looked a lot like the pictures I saw in the Sunday school rooms of the Jordan River Valley, but this was the Euphrates. And what I saw was one of the largest explosions, which was cooked off near the column. And the column was one of 70% of those that were operating in Iraq and Afghanistan. This focus were bringing gas and water into a forward operating basis. And that allowed me to expand and also to see how the climate was beginning to be more extreme with droughts and precipitation and impact our operations, and that the energy use and the climate were linked. And I think about 12 years ago, one of the real events in the military understanding more about climate security occurred when the Center for Naval Analysis published a study that identified climate change as a threat multiplier, that it impacted the stability, immigration, our ability to operate not only overseas but at home. So yes, the military has realized the impact that climate change has for a long time and continues to plan and move in order to be able to counter what's happening.
And when we talk about a threat multiplier, we're talking about how climate change increases the military's challenges, right? Everything from terrorism to supply chains that help the military conduct operations to infectious disease like the pandemic we're living through.
Oh, yes. And, let me sort of divide it. Military folks like to put things in little boxes and then see how they impact each other. And I think that we talk about two major categories of how climate impacts us. The first one is overseas. I spent a lot of my career overseas, and one of the places a fair amount of time was West Africa and the Lake Chad Basin. And what you have there is the climate is getting drier, the Sahara is moving south, and you have an impact on a number of groups there. You have an impact on the fishermen that were on Lake Chad, and as the lake reduced in size, the fishermen were pushed off the lake. Also, you had herdsmen in the north. As the Sahara came south and the grass just did not exist, both the fishermen and the herdsmen moved into the area where the farmers were in the south. And that increased instability, gunfights between those individuals and those groups. And then it gave an opportunity for Boko Haram to get a foothold, and it is a insurgency that eventually will impact us. And then you look at the United States and look at Jacksonville and the potential for sea level rise and the impact on Mayport, which is the third largest Navy fleet in the United States. You look at the potential for impact on NAS Jacksonville and other installations, the Marine Corps' Blunt Island. So you can see that the impact is on both here at home in terms of our ability to operate our infrastructure and to deploy to such contingencies that are created by climate change impact on areas such as the Lake Chad Basin.
Thank you for that summation. I really think that helps people get their head around this issue. So, Brendan, Lieutenant General Castelaw will join you along with members of the Jacksonville City Council, Randy DeFore and Aaron Bowman. He's a retired Navy captain himself. For this special event, looking at these issues, and as we heard the Lieutenant General say, Naval Station Mayport, NAS Jax, are going to be threatened by rising waters. And we're talking, as you've been reporting, about hundreds of thousands of jobs and more than $1 billion worth of infrastructure threatened by this.
Yeah, that's correct. And yes, so tomorrow's event, it's the American Security Project will actually be hosting this one. So I'll get a break this time. I'll get to sit in the audience and watch this time. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I mean, both of the big Navy stations here in Jacksonville are under threat from climate change and sea level rise, but especially Naval Station Mayport. I mean, there are projections that by the end of the century, if we don't reduce emissions and sea levels keep rising at the rate they're rising right now, about half of the land at Mayport could be lost to the tide. So that would be catastrophic, not only for the Navy base itself, but for the city of Jacksonville. This is a huge base. There's more than 15,000 active duty people there. They have about 32,000 family members. There's like 100,000 jobs there, as you mentioned, and over $1 billion in infrastructure. So that much damage to that naval station would be catastrophic for the city of Jacksonville as well. It kind of brings to mind something that Sean Lahav, the resiliency coordinator at the Northeast Florida Regional Council, which is also involved in this event, when he talks about resiliency, he likes to show this kind of iconic picture from the Panhandle where a hurricane hit and it just knocked over every house except for one house. And there was just this one house that was standing and it looked fine. And so that one person did everything right, but because no one else around them did, they were kind of isolated, and who's going to want to live in that house? You know, I think it's kind of the same thing when we're talking about this. These military bases are dependent on the communities and they're in. And if the communities aren't taking steps to protect themselves, then the military bases are going to suffer as well, and that's going to impact their readiness. That's going to impact our ability as a nation to be ready for external threats.
Lots of calls, 549-2937. We're previewing our event tomorrow night at WJCT Studios, examining the impact of climate change on our national security. What are your questions? 549-2937. Dave is in Nassau County. Hi, Dave. Go ahead.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
My question is simply this. How are we possibly going to make progress on climate change when both of our senators and Representative Rutherford deny that climate change exists or that humans are causing it? And I'll take your response off the air. Thank you.
Okay, Lieutenant General Castellaw, can you talk about how the military is working on this issue, given that it is still politically divisive, unfortunately, and we don't have political consensus on both sides of the aisle on the need to get serious about adaptation and mitigation measures and drawing down carbon emissions? As a retired military officer, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, you know, the military continues to do our job. Why are we interested in climate change? Why do we want to build resiliency in our infrastructure? Why do we want to be able to deploy and operate in areas of extreme weather? It's not because, you know, we're in love with polar bears or any of the other elements that are associated with
I don't typically think of the military as a tree-hugging constituency. Yeah. Yeah.
But so, you know, our number one mission is to fight and win the battles of this nation, to defend our citizens. And so that's why we have been involved in it. And that's why we will continue to be involved in it. And that's why, you know, we when we have engaged with Congress, this is one of the elements that we talked about. You know, I grew up in the Marine Corps with Jim Mattis, Secretary of Defense, former CENTCOM commander, legend in the Marine Corps, and you know, and even during the Trump administration, he was very vocal about the need to counter climate change. And let me also say, you know, I come from Tennessee. I live on a farm. My family's been farmers in America for 300 years. And I came back to be a part of this. And around me, people are realizing, hey, because, you know, the growing season is longer, we're having to do more conservation measures in order to protect the soil. We have events like happened in McEwen where we had 17 inches of rain. All those are saying, hey, you know, this is changing. So I did recently an event at Discovery Park of America, which was well attended by local people in the community. So, you know, the tide is changing. It's not changing as fast as we want it to. It's not changing as fast as it needs to change, but it's changing.
Brendan Rivers, you know, as this event takes place here at WJCT tomorrow, The time is 10 a.m., by the way, in our studios. People can also register for the live stream if they don't want to attend in person. A new UN climate report shows just how close we're getting to the edge of climate disaster, the urgent need to cut emissions quickly to avoid some of the most dire impacts that you've been reporting on. This is a multi-theater global war, to put it in military terms, and Florida is on the front lines of this war. I'm quoting from an op-ed in today's Times-Union by columnist John Burr. This is of particular urgency for Florida, Brendan. Can you talk about your reporting at ADAPT Florida looking at this?
Yeah, absolutely. So for any listeners who aren't familiar, ADAPT is our digital magazine focused on climate change, how it's impacting Northeast Florida and what's being done about it. And right now I'm basically producing one long-form, well-researched story a month, and then I'm sending it out to subscribers to our newsletter. So if you want to subscribe to that newsletter, just go to adaptflorida.org and click on sign up at the top right, and you'll be the first person to get this new reporting. You'll also be the first to hear about events like this one coming up tomorrow. And yeah, Melissa, as you said, climate change, I mean, it's a huge threat everywhere. It's played a role in the flooding in Tennessee that we mentioned earlier. It's intensifying hurricanes. It's making flooding worse. It's driving droughts and extreme heat on the West Coast and the wildfires that they're having there. It has so many effects that aren't immediately evident, and they're just getting worse as we continue to burn fossil fuels. And this latest IPCC report just makes it clear that we're really teetering on the edge, and this is the first report that just unequivocally says that humans are causing this. There's not really any scientific doubt or debate at this point. And to get to David's point, his question from earlier, I think we are starting to see a shift politically. A lot of people who may have been resistant to accepting the science of climate change are now agreeing that it's happening. There is still some debate over whether humans are causing it in the political landscape, but I think that's also shifting with age. If you look at polling, a lot of younger conservatives are very much on board and saying, yes, humans are causing this. Yes, we need to do something about it. So there is an ongoing shift in public opinion on this issue. And I guess sort of the value that we have at ADAPT is we think that it's really important to tell local climate stories, because that helps show people that this is happening now and it's impacting you and it's impacting your community maybe in ways that you weren't aware of. So that's why I think it's important to support local efforts like ADAPT and like this event that we'll be hosting tomorrow, where the audience will get a chance to hear directly from local decision makers. Councilwoman DeFore and Councilman Bowman have both been involved in these discussions locally, so I think they're great people to hear from. And the Lieutenant General on the line with me here is very knowledgeable on this issue, so I think it's going to be a really great event, and I'm looking forward to it.
Lots of calls about our event tomorrow at WJCT at 10 a.m., hosted by the American Security Project, the Northeast Florida Regional Planning Council, and our own digital magazine, ADAPT Florida. Climate change and national security, 549-2937. Eric in Arlington. Hi, Eric. Good morning.
Hi. The United States of America is under attack right now. Out west, we're having the worst drought that we know of in history since we've been keeping records, to the point where they've already asked some people out there in Arizona, I think, and other places to start rationing water. The water out there also acts as a method of generating electricity at all these dams. This drought is threatening the well-being of half the country. On the East Coast, as we know, the entire Gulf Coast states and the Atlantic seaboard are all also under attack from flooding, whether it be from torrential rains, hurricanes, and so on that are coming more and more often. So we are under attack. It's not communist China or Russia. It's the environment, and it just seems like we should take resources that we have been putting toward, like these adventures in Iraq and Afghanistan, and turn them inward toward helping people. And I'll give you one specific example as I hang up here. I live in the 32254 zip code. Over here we have septic tanks, and we have a series of sort of canals in our front yard that drain the water out of the neighborhood to a big retaining pond. All these little ditches in the yards are all clogged up. None of them work. The whole thing doesn't work. And I'm convinced that 2 or 3 days with a significant contingent of armed forces with the equipment they have and the manpower, they could probably get this thing straightened out in a week. Whereas the city will never do it. I've been calling them for years about this, and they came out one time and did sort of a half-hearted effort, and they only did the area in front of my house. They didn't do the rest of it, so it still doesn't work. So we need new leadership, the kind of leadership that was provided by General Milley when Trump recently, almost, essentially attempted a coup. The military,
but Eric, not to cut you off, but let's keep it to the topic at hand today. Although you made some amazing points, and I really thank you for the call. Thanks so much, Eric. Okay, General Castelaw. As he pointed out, climate change isn't some far-off issue. It's happening now in your home state of Tennessee, too.
Yeah. The issue is this. Too often, we think of national security as boots on the ground and the military. Our ability to ensure our national security is much wider. Yes, it's true. The availability of water in the West is a national security issue because it affects our economy. I spend a good deal of time out there going through the irrigation system that runs from the Rio Grande down through northern Arizona down into the central part. And it's going to impact the farmers. We're going to have an issue with food security, which is just as much a part of national security as any other elements of our security. So yes, we need to have a holistic approach to what our national security is, and we need to be less willing whenever something happens to default to the military. We need to invest in our infrastructure. We need to invest in transition to more sustainable energy. All those elements are critically important to our success as a nation in the future.
Now, to that end, here's an email from Mark over at Mayport Naval Station. He's listening right now, and he says, a nuclear-powered Navy would be a strategic advantage in the coming decades, and getting off marine diesel fuel would be a green advancement for surface ships. So, Lieutenant General Castelaw, at this event, you will be talking about the national security threats posed by climate change and the need to draw down emissions. To Mark's point over from Mayport, how can the military be part of those solutions?
From the time in the early 2000s to now, a lot of effort to go to net zero installations, a lot of effort to find other alternative energy use. I talked about 70% of those convoys carrying gas in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's a critical risk to us to have to depend on that. So we are actively looking at other fuels. Also, we do little things like this. Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri is where Marines and soldiers go to learn how to drive trucks, tactical vehicles. And one of the things, a little thing, but it makes a difference, is to learn to drive those vehicles in the most sustainable way and to reduce the amount of fuel that's required to drive them. When we bring new vehicles, when we bring new airplanes in, one of the things that we're looking at harder than we've ever looked at before is how much fuel they use, what's going to be the logistical chain to support that. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I was involved with the Navy with a Green Fleet around 2014 or so. All of that are efforts underway by the Department of Defense and by the military to reduce the use of fossil fuel.
I want to thank you, Lieutenant General John Castelaw, U.S. Marine Corps. He's retired and now co-founder and CEO of Farm Space Systems, LLC, a recognized national security expert. He will be present tomorrow at WJCT along with City Council members Randy DeFore and Aaron Bowman as we host an important conversation about climate change and national security. The American Security Project and the Northeast Florida Regional Planning Council are partnering with us. This is free and open to the public and will live stream if you don't want to come in person. But you can join in person. Register now at WJCT.org. And thank you so much to you both, Lieutenant General John Castellaw and our own Brendan Rivers, for giving us this important preview.
Thank you. And by the way, I'll be there with both my shots and my mask.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely right. This will be a COVID-safe event. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
And much more still ahead. Later in the hour, it's our preview of the Jaguars-Saints matchup airing tonight on Monday Night Football. But up next.
We're the only certified rape recovery program, and we also provide the forensic exams for those seeking support immediately following a sexual assault.
How the Women's Center is helping survivors of sexual assault survive and even thrive. We'll be right back. Well, tomorrow you can join a virtual event supporting the Women's Center of Jacksonville. It's called Thrive. I got a preview from State Attorney Melissa Nelson and Teresa Miles, Executive Director of the Women's Center. Take a listen. Teresa Miles, Melissa Nelson, a pleasure to have you both on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa,
for having us.
In a moment, we'll hear from State Attorney Nelson about the Thrive event and the importance of providing this kind of support. But first, Teresa, if you could, let's explain what the Women's Center of Jacksonville does, your purpose.
Oh, absolutely, Melissa. Our mission is really to focus on the lives of women through advocacy, support, and education. And we are the provider of rape recovery services here in Jacksonville. We serve actually Duval, Nassau, and Baker County. We're the only certified rape recovery program. And we also provide the forensic exams for those seeking support immediately following a sexual assault.
So tell us how this judicial circuit, Melissa Nelson, works with the Women's Center of Jacksonville. They are the only certified rape crisis center in the area, and the demand for their services, it's my understanding, has really increased in this pandemic. Is that right?
It has, and certainly the demand for counseling and mental health services over the last year. But our office works really hand in glove with the Women's Center. Obviously, we're charged with prosecuting and holding to account those who commit sexual assault. And the Women's Center is, in many cases, the very first contact that a survivor of a sexual assault has. And so for those cases that are solved and a perpetrator is arrested and informed against by our office, we obviously work with the Women's Center in the capacity of them providing testimony and evidence in our prosecution. So our Special Victims Unit works very closely with the Women's Center.
Sure. And the statistics are pretty alarming, Teresa. Women have disproportionate family stress, domestic violence. They really are in need of these services. Can you talk about what you're seeing with the patients you're dealing with?
Yeah, absolutely, Melissa. What we've really seen in the area of mental health has been about a 56% increase in the sessions that we're having through our counseling program. And it really is, a direct reflection of the stress, the anxiety, really the despair that people have felt throughout these times with COVID-19, compounded by the potential of a sexual assault or some type of a traumatic event that's happened in their lives. So we are definitely feeling that impact. And the need for counseling services is significant. I can tell you, even with our employees within the Women's Center, who we have insurance for, and they're seeking it externally, they're looking at 8 weeks before they can get their first appointment. So we know that the needs are significant in the community, and we are trying desperately to help those who don't have insurance and who have real challenges right now.
So, with all of that said, State Attorney Melissa Nelson, you will be hosting Thrive, a virtual event to benefit the Women's Center of Jacksonville. Mega Parek of the Jaguars will also be on hand. There's going to be a town hall discussion. What will people learn when they log on to this important event on the calendar?
Well, our hope is that the public in our community will learn about the very important and very good work that the Women's Center does in Nassau, Baker, and Duval counties. Our hope is that they'll learn about the gap they fill in the space of sexual assault, and that they'll learn about the things Teresa has just talked about, the increase in need for services and mental health counseling. And our hope is that this event will not only educate, but encourage members of the public to give, to donate to this very, very important nonprofit.
Right. This is a way for people to support the work of the Women's Center. Teresa, tell us how people can join and be part of this.
So the wonderful thing about going virtual, which is what we're doing, we had expected to have 300 people in the room at the Hyatt, and now going virtual, it is going to be open to everyone, which we are thrilled about. So people can simply log on to our website to register. There is no cost. So just simply go to thewcj.org. So www.thewcj.org and register. And then the day of, you just click on our website and it will be live there, streaming live. That's the exciting thing, is we can now have more people in this virtual room than ever before. And some of what we're looking at too is we're going to focus on resilience. We have seen so many people come through this time stronger than ever. And we've got some wonderful messages of hope for the community. And that's really exciting. We're going to be drawing right from our own professionals. We're going to have mental health professionals as well as advocates talking on a panel, really sharing with them and with the community in ways that we can all be resilient during these difficult times.
Check it out online at the Women's Center of Jacksonville. Register now for Thrive 2021 Resilience, the Courage to Come Back. It's set for August 24th at 9 a.m. Hosted by State Attorney Melissa Nelson. Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you, Teresa Miles, Executive Director, Women's Center of Jacksonville. Sure to be quite impactful. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa.
Well, one business that's been hit pretty hard by the pandemic is the live music industry. The vaccine had offered a lot of hope for a return to normalcy, but not in states like Florida. Vaccine passports here have been banned, and the Delta variant is surging. That's thrown a wrench into plans for a comeback of live performances. Matt Shaw of our Jacksonville Music Experience has been looking into this, and he's here now to tell us more. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
So the Save Our Stages Act was passed by Congress last year to provide local venues like Jackrabbits, the Florida Theater, Blue Jay at the Beach, all these local venues, to provide them funding so that they could stay afloat until full capacity shows came back, right? So where are we now?
Yeah, so it seemed like venues who received this money were kind of getting their feet underneath them. We had a return to full capacity shows, which everyone was excited about. Artists, live music fans, it's this really revelrous, cathartic feeling to be able to go to a show again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this surge in the Delta variant that has kind of put a pause on the situation. It's the unwanted interloper to live music shows. And you talk about risky behaviors, when we're all on lockdown, it seemed like going to either, especially a small venue, shoulder to shoulder with people. There's people singing, people talking loudly. It's, one of the riskiest behaviors.
The other night, our oldest wanted to go to a show at 1904 Music Hall with her friends. And we kind of said, maybe you need to skip that for a little,
Right.
maybe not.
Yeah, and you think about 2 months ago when the CDC was telling us that it was okay to take your mask off if you're vaccinated. But then in places like Northeast Florida where vaccination rates are low, you have unvaccinated population that is still going to shows. And the state has outlawed vaccine passports.
That's the problem. So what are the local venues telling you? Because some acts demand them.
Right. So right now the onus has been put on the artists to, put it out in their social media, encourage people to wear masks or don't come if you're not vaccinated. But last week there was 2 big announcements from the largest live music companies in the country, Live Nation Entertainment and AEG Presents, who's own venues and also work with venues, including ones in Northeast Florida, that said they were going to require vaccine passports or proof of negative test, which runs, will collide at some point with state laws prohibiting that.
This is interesting. A quote from our coverage on this, Tim Miller, who books a lot of live acts all over town. He said requests for COVID policies have become like the proverbial brown M&M.
Right.
That's like, I love that it's a reference to Van Halen's concert writer in the 70s saying we have to have brown M&Ms in the green room. What it really was they were making sure the venues were reading the contract
right.
and doing everything right.
Right. So if you don't know, a performance rider is really just a performance contract that artists or the representation will send to venues to make sure they have, requests for catering or, plenty of water or just things to make the band comfortable. But from the reporting that I did for this story, you have artists who are asking the venues, asking the local impresarios who put on shows, they're asking about COVID policies at the venues. It is like the topic of discussion. And for, these mid-level bands, especially who are getting back on the road, I think it's especially unfortunate because there was such a demand for these bands to get out there and play again that there weren't even enough venues for them. And so Jacksonville, we were talking 2 months ago about Jacksonville being part of this small market touring boom where if you couldn't get a show in Atlanta or something like that, well, your booking agent might reroute you to Jacksonville. Same thing with like San Antonio. If you can't get a show in Austin, your booking agent might send you to San Antonio. So it could potentially be a missed opportunity for Jacksonville's music scene. Right.
I mean, and some shows are being rescheduled at the Florida Theater, other venues. These venues need every booking they can get.
Totally, yeah. And a lot of it's still TBD. We have Sing Out Loud coming up in St. Johns County next month. It's a huge, month-long festival with over, I think, 100 venues around St. Johns County and the historic district in St. Augustine that will be having, there's shows scheduled there. And so the folks that I've talked to with knowledge of the situation there said, they're having the same discussions. They have a heavy, a big lineup scheduled for the amphitheater, Colonial Oak Music Park. And so that's a discussion that's happening. There's been no announcements yet, but we could see some mandates for Sing Out Loud. That's in September.
We'll have to watch for that. Our own music director, David Luckin, tells us his daughter got vaccinated just so she could go to shows.
Yeah. And
a lot of young adults, that's the reason that they're giving.
So Lollapalooza in Chicago, which was at the end of July, 300,000 people showed up to that festival, and they did a survey, and 12% of attendees there, because they had a proof of vaccination mandate, 12% of people who went to Lollapalooza said they got vaccinated so that they could attend Lollapalooza.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So with all of this said, what's the best advice you have for people out there that really, they just are looking forward to getting out and enjoying some live performance again.
I think, it's funny to me that maybe 3 months ago when we were talking about this return to live music, I think I said, get your Fauci ouchie,
Right.
kind of joking. But I think, the large majority of artists and venue owners want you to get vaccinated and so that they can safely put on shows and you can safely attend them. So that's my advice. If you want to support the scene here locally, get your vaccine and let's get through this.
Exactly. You can read more about this at jacksmusic.org. It's our JME, the Jacksonville Music Experience, with regular contributor Matt Shaw keeping us in the loop on all doings and events involving local and national musical happenings. Always good to have you on the show. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Melissa.
Again, that's jacksmusic.org. And in a moment, a preview of tonight's preseason matchup as the Jaguars take on the Saints in Monday Night Football. Will you be watching? That's next.
Whiskey, Wine, and Wildlife in Jekyll Island, Georgia combines beverage tastings and cuisine from the South. September 9th through 12th. Experience cultural, wildlife, interactive programs, music, and more. Info at whiskeywineandwildlife.com.
To hear what local military installations are doing about climate change, join the American Security Project in partnership with ADAPT for a discussion on Tuesday, August 24th at 10 a.m. Register now at wjct.org/events.
It's the biggest stories affecting the Sunshine State. Hi, I'm Melissa Ross.
And I'm Tom Hudson. Join us Friday for the Florida Roundup.
Each week at noon, we interview newsmakers and people from across the state discussing the stories and issues that affect your life. What's driving the conversation in Florida?
Join the conversation on the Florida Roundup.
Every Friday at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, the songwriter of Schmigadoon, a series that lovingly satirizes musicals of the 40s and early 50s. We meet Cinco Paul, who also co-created and co-wrote the series, which is streaming on Apple TV+. Join us
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Tokyo is about to become the first and only city to have hosted the Paralympic Games twice. A record number of countries are sending athletes, but Afghanistan's two athletes, including its first ever woman Paralympian, haven't been able to leave Kabul since the Taliban's takeover. With the Olympic flame about to be lit once again, we've got a guide to the Games, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, the Jaguars meet the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football tonight. It's the second game of their preseason.
Our director, Josh Torres, has his take on the big national TV spot for the Jags and some other local sports news and notes. Hey, Josh.
Hello, Melissa, and hello, everybody.
All right, so what are you thinking?
Well, Jags fans, it's finally time. We get a nationally televised game. It is the preseason, though.
Yeah.
But hey, we will take what we can get. There's a lot to look forward to. Unfortunately, there is one big face who will not be making the trip. Tim Tebow was cut, as a lot of people probably have already heard. He was part of the first round of cuts last Tuesday. Urban Meyer praised Tebow's work and the fact that he was willing to do so much to try and start in a new position, but unfortunately, it was always going to be a long shot for him. It appeared one of the biggest factors was the fact that he wasn't really going to be able to play on special teams, because one of the biggest parts of special teams is your tackling ability. And Tebow, I mean, a lot of people might think, hey, just stand in front of the guy and grab him, but there's a lot more that goes into tackling somebody than just that. And so that seemed to be the biggest thing. But as the things to look forward to for tonight, look for Trevor Lawrence. He really does, so far in camp, appear to be QB1, although Urban Meyer is still keeping it very tongue-in-cheek as to who will be starting week 1 against the Texans.
Keep the suspense going, yeah.
And said he's still holding an open competition between everybody. But Trevor he's really looked the most consistent between him and Gardner Minshew. So I'm really hoping that today he plays a lot more, especially compared to some of the other quarterbacks who were also taken in the first round. I mean, Justin Fields had 19 pass attempts in the Bears game. Granted, he was considered the second-string quarterback. Zach Wilson of the New York Jets had 11 pass attempts and threw 2 touchdowns. Mac Jones for the Patriots, he had 19. And last night, Trey Lance with the San Francisco 49ers, I believe he had about 14 pass attempts and played quite a bit in the second half. So I think he really needs to play. I'm not saying play for the entire half, but he definitely needs to get some series with the first team offense, because I understand the competition is to try and push everybody to be their best. But at some point, you have to wonder how long until it starts to hurt the offense. I mean, he's really going to it's really going to just you have to be in touch with each other, and so it's going to kind of wonder how long until it starts to hurt them more than it's helping them. So other people to look forward to, CJ Henderson. I mean, this is a guy who missed the first few days of training camp due to being on the COVID list. Also missed some days due to personal reason. A lot of people kind of wondered how long are the Jags going to continue to hold on to him, and he has just come out on fire since he's gotten back into camp. Absolutely impressed everybody, and he's finally starting to really look like the first-round pick that the Jags hoped he would be. And so I'm really hoping he continues that heat going into the regular season. And then also Andre Sisco, one of our picks this year out of Syracuse, he has looked great, especially at that safety spot. And even Urban Meyer has said that he is in the conversation as starting week 1. So those are definitely 2 players on the defensive side that I'm really looking forward to see what they're going to do. And then tomorrow, tonight, it's going to be big for a lot of guys who are on the cusp, because tomorrow is the next set of cuts. The cuts are going to bring the roster from 85 to 80 as we look forward to getting to the final cuts of 53, who will be your 2021 Jags.
Yeah, it's brutal. But tonight at 8 o'clock on ESPN, some national TV exposure. And by the way, the zoo is getting in on the Trevor Lawrence excitement.
Yes, they are. The Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens announced that one of their new male giraffe calves, they decided to name him Trevor after the one and only Trevor Lawrence.
So cute. Okay, let's talk baseball. The Jacksonville-based company Fanatics has struck a deal, Josh says, to become the exclusive baseball card license holder for Major League Baseball.
Oh, yes, they have. And this is definitely a time to do this. I mean, anybody, especially I would say people my age and who have been on the internet, have seen card collecting as a whole has really, really exploded over the last year. Even myself, I'm a person who I knew, baseball and football and other kind of collectible cards existed, but I did not realize how deep it all went until this year. And so Fanatics, everybody, if you've bought any type of sports memorabilia, you've probably gotten it through Fanatics. Even if you bought it from the official website of a team, it probably was through Fanatics who sold it. and they have reached a deal to become the exclusive baseball card license holder for the MLB and the MLBPA. They're also have struck a deal with the NBAPA and the NFL Players Association as well. Both of them have deals with the card company Panini, and those two deals that don't expire until 2025 and 2026, 2025 for NBA, 26 for NFL. But the new MLB one with Fanatics will start in 2022. And this is going to be crazy because they're expecting their revenue to be as much as $2 billion.
$2 billion.
$2 billion by 2045.
I knew people liked to collect baseball cards, Josh, but I didn't realize how much
Melissa,
people like to collect
trust me when I say
baseball
I did
cards.
not either until I started to look into this. You would not believe the depth that card collecting goes into. There are companies out there that all they do is take your cards and give them a rating just so for when you resell them. And essentially, it's almost like when you get a used car. If it doesn't meet a certain rating, you're not going to get full price for it. I could talk for the next 20 minutes about it.
But you know who's getting the full price? Fanatics.
Oh, yes.
They're getting all the dollars. Always good to get your sports insights. Josh Torres with us every Monday now that sports is really heating up in town. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Josh is also show director. Thanks to our producers, Heather Schatz and Catherine Hobbs. I'm Melissa Ross. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, everyone. Have a great day. Be safe.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.